If you're someone that plays a lot of games on the PC, then chances are you're aware of Steam, or more likely you have a Steam account yourself. But did you also know that you can view your games by the amount of hours spent on them, just by going on your profile? If not, then why not give it a go yourself? Maybe you'll be surprised at the results. Speaking of which, that's actually why I'm here today. I thought it would be interesting to take a look at the games I've invested the most ridiculous amounts of hours into, so I can ask the important questions. Why? Why did I play these games so much? What drew me to them in the first place? Why do I have such bad taste? Okay, that last one is debatable, but you see what I'm trying to say. It really does make you wonder about the person and their unique taste in games. Hello there guys, my name is Turkey, and I hope you'll join me as we take a look at my top 6 most played games on Steam. Just be careful though, you may not like what you see. Starting our list, we have Dark Souls 2 at only 341 hours? Huh, okay, I'm surprised. I actually thought that would be higher on the list. Well, if you've seen my videos, then you already know I'm a fan of the Dark Souls series, with Dark Souls 2 being the one I've probably had the most experience and playtime with. If you've never played any games in the Dark Souls series, then you should probably know that they are well known for being difficult games. They will force you to overcome unforgiving gameplay, relentless hordes of enemies, and the toughest of bosses, just in order to win. I was one of many who was thrilled at the idea of a new Dark Souls game, but even after the game was officially released, I couldn't play it for a few weeks due to internet problems. This didn't put me in a good mood, as you can imagine. So, since my friends had already played through the story by the time I got on, I was forced to do a first playthrough completely alone. I'm sure most people would have been fine, but let's not forget this is me we're talking about, and I assure you, I made plenty of silly mistakes. Hundreds, in fact. In time, however, I would eventually adapt and learn to tackle tough areas and bosses single-handedly. I may not have been naturally good at this game, but I would make up for that through sheer persistence. This was especially true when the DLC content was released soon afterwards, and the bosses were designed to be far more difficult than anything we had encountered before. After playing both Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, I will agree that the original Dark Souls did have the better atmosphere. It did a much better job on making you feel scared and alone in a dark world that wants nothing more than to watch you die horribly. I can even agree that some of the locations and bosses were much more memorable. So then why did I put so many hours into Dark Souls 2? A game which I'm sure many people openly criticise for not being quite the sequel we were hoping for. Well, despite it falling short in some aspects, I still found myself getting immersed into it. Perhaps it was the fact the game actually ran smoothly on PC, unlike its predecessor, which even to this day refuses to work properly without mods. Perhaps it was because I felt bad about missing out on Dark Souls when it first came out, and this was my way of making up for that. Or maybe I was just satisfied with what we got in the end. Honestly, I'm not too bothered which answer is the most correct, but whatever the reason, I'm actually proud to say I played the crap out of Dark Souls 2, and honestly I hope to do so again at some point in the future. Next on the list we have Borderlands 2 at 379 hours playtime. I was initially surprised at the amount of hours I put into this game. Keep in mind, I haven't played it in a while, until I remembered that this is Borderlands 2 we're talking about. From what I do remember, it was designed to be a good game with decent replayability. There were plenty of characters to choose from, each character having a unique action skill as well as a number of skill trees with different traits to build said character in a way that suits you. A wide variety of different guns, with different manufacturers affecting how the gun looks and functions. Different rarities of weapons meant that some guns were superior to other guns, giving you more initiative to aim for the higher tier weaponry. And last, but certainly not least, we got an action-packed story involving so many colourful, hilarious characters, all put together in a scenario where you'll have to save the world of Pandora from a villain you won't know whether to love or hate. I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's a really, really good game. If you played the game enough, you should also know that they did release additional campaigns in the form of downloadable content, and for the most part I did enjoy playing through them, But I think I should give a special mention to the final campaign they added, Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, mixing the crazy antics of Borderlands 2 with a fantasy theme full of references to other fantasy games and films? Pure genius, as far as I'm concerned. Borderlands 2 is a game that doesn't take itself too seriously, and yet shows a perfect example on how a good sequel should be done. Honestly, it was quite the experience, and I would highly recommend this one if you missed out on it. Our next entry is Terraria, at 455 hours playtime? For an indie game? Maybe I should explain. If Borderlands 2 is an example of a good sequel done right, then Terraria really is an example of a seemingly simple game with huge potential. Terraria is described on the website as blending elements of classic action games with the freedom of sandbox-style creativity. But if you're looking for a more simplified description, you could probably say it's like a 2D version of Minecraft. At least on a basic level, not completely, that they're not the same game. In fact, people do often compare Terraria to Minecraft since both have more emphasis on creative gameplay over advanced graphics. Both games also have randomly generated worlds with different distinct biomes, as well as boasting similar features such as being able to mine, craft and build. However, I do have to make it clear again that this isn't Minecraft. Well, obviously it isn't, but what I mean is that Terraria is so much more than just another sandbox-style survival game. It really is a unique experience on its own. Terraria is Terraria, and Terraria is an adventure. Now this brings us to the main point of the game. What are you supposed to do now? Well, the main goal is to work towards obtaining better equipment through different methods such as gathering resources and exploring. You'll eventually encounter boss monsters who may be too much for you to handle, giving you even more initiative to upgrade yourself. When you do finally get good enough to beat one, you'll likely get materials to build even better equipment, which will allow you to stand up to even tougher bosses and enemies. The key word here is progression, and that's what you're doing throughout the entire game. You're constantly trying to find a way to progress. You'll continue to get stronger and gain more assets, which you'll use to get stronger again and gain even more assets. The cycle will continue until you stop and realise you're already hooked on this charming little game. For the price you paid, the amount of content here is pretty staggering, to say the least. There really isn't a clear objective as to how you go about achieving these goals and what order you do them in. It's completely up to you. That's the beauty of the game. You have freedom to do what you want, and with the randomly generated world, you'll likely have a unique experience compared to others. Why not share in the experience and try it yourself? It's not too expensive either. At number 3 we have Team Fortress 2, and not surprisingly quite high on the list at 489 hours playtime. I believe this is one of the original games I actually bought on Steam, back when I got a new computer and actually started playing on PC games mostly. Yes, you heard me, I bought Team Fortress 2. Team Fortress 2 wasn't always a free-to-play game, and it was before this time that I actually decided to try the game for myself. Actually, on that topic, it was nice of the developers to give us a free hat for being one of the lucky people to buy the game before it went free, but unfortunately you won't see me wearing it anytime soon. Sorry, it's just not my style. Now, I'm sure everyone has heard of the game, but for those that aren't really aware of all the mechanics and how it works, I'll give you a quick rundown. Team Fortress 2 can be described as a zany first-person shooter, where you pick from 9 different classes, each performing different roles within the categories of offense, defense, or support. As an example, you have the medic, whose main job is to heal the team when they take damage, and occasionally use his uber charge to buff an ally in what might be a chance to turn the tide of a battle. Each class comes with different health pools and, more importantly, different options when it comes to the types of weapon they're allowed to use. I believe the default weapons, the ones you start with for each character, used to be the only ones available when the game first came out. However, since then they have released a ton of new weapons in updates that you can either buy, craft, or get randomly as a drop. Yes, the game does have a crafting system, which, now that I think about it, is pretty unique, isn't it? Most games, if not all, are objective-based. These generally involve capturing all the points on a map or stealing the enemy intelligence and bringing it back to your base. Basically capture the flag. But either way, you'll have to find a way to work alongside the other classes on your team to achieve this goal. And that's basically what Team Fortress 2 is. It's a fun, free-to-play game where you do battle in a colourful environment, using only the most ridiculous weapons to achieve something as pointless as capturing a control point. It's all so stupid, so simple, and yet that's probably why I've sunk so many hours into it. I suppose the chance to get random weapons as drops while playing was another deal breaker for me, and trying out these new toys will add even more hours onto the total hours played, just like it did for me. At number 2, we have Dota 2 at 555 hours playtime. Fun fact, did you know I used to play Warcraft 3? Then it probably shouldn't surprise you that I have actually played the original Dota that started it all, or, the mod. I remember trying it with an old friend, and I assure you, we were horrible at it. I actually remember constantly getting ganked by the AI, since I just couldn't wrap my head around the idea. I had no idea what I was doing on this game mode. Years later, the success and popularity of the original Dota would lead Valve to recreate it, with each character being redesigned, rebalanced, and revoiced? Is that a word? They each got their own unique voice and dialogue, I mean. It would take me a while before I'd pluck up the courage to finally try it. Sure, I loved the idea of playing a more up-to-date Dota. Warcraft 3 graphics haven't aged that well. But I also heard that it was a very competitive game, and competitive games really aren't my thing. I don't like the pressure, I guess. I don't know. Still, I knew I really did have to give it a go, so eventually I said to myself, screw it, I'm going to try this game and see what I think of it. I know I've mentioned this in my previous top video about Dota, but at the time of this video I'm still only level 15, with my most played game type being limited heroes. It is normal for newer players to play this mode, but it's possible I may have overstayed my welcome. Seriously, I have played too much limited heroes. The only game type we did dabble in occasionally was least played, since at least that gave you more options for heroes, while forcing more experienced players to play heroes they weren't quite as good with. Oh, I say we, because I actually managed to convince Shaun to try this game too. Me and Shaun spent months going through the seemingly endless list of heroes, each with their own unique personality and playstyle. We were determined to find ones that suited us. Even though we did play some online games, most of the good times we've had on here was actually spent on offline games against the AI. And keep in mind, this does apply for most of the 500 plus hours I've spent on Dota 2 as well. If you're a Dota 2 enthusiast, you may wonder how two people can be crazy enough to play an online competitive game and yet put so many hours into the offline mode. But if so, then you clearly haven't met people like us. We really are crazy, and I think we're actually okay with that. Although, if there's anyone else that does this, or has the habit of doing this, then feel free to tell me. I'm curious to see whether other people do this. I don't think many people do. Now, I'd recommend this game if you're looking for a more competitive, role-based game with a lot of different options to choose from. Play it enough, and maybe you too will find the hero made for you. It's been a long video, but finally we're at the end of the list. Now you can find out the top game on my Steam list, the most played game, the champion of my Steam library. What is it? Well, you're about to find out. Dawn of War 2 Retribution is the #1 game on my most played games on Steam. 815 hours have been put into this game by yours truly. This is the game that introduced me to the Warhammer 40k universe, a universe I've become a big fan of. I may not play the tabletop, which is a shame. Maybe I should get into it at some point. But thanks to this game, I have become a huge fan of the lore of the PC games that are involved with this franchise. I was actually introduced to this game by Shaun. I remember being at his house one day and watching him play The Last Stand. The Last Stand is basically a game mode on Dawn of War 2. It's essentially Horde mode, that's what it is, but as a real-time strategy. So a little bit different from what people are used to. Eventually, I wanted to try it myself, but rather than buying the full game, I actually bought something called The Last Standalone, which is a standalone version of The Last Stand, so you can play this one game mode and that's it. You can't play anything else on Dawn of War 2. This game mode gave me no context or any idea about the various races, but I absolutely loved it anyway. I remember starting off as the Hive Tyrant because he was very big and intimidating, but eventually I would take an interest in the Space Marine Captain and Chaos Sorcerer, who were arguably more fun to play. But after some time, I couldn't take it anymore. This just wasn't doing it for me. I had to try the main game and see what I was missing out on. I needed to know more about Warhammer 40k, about this game. So I bought it, and what do you know, I actually loved it. I would spend my time playing the crap out of offline skirmish and campaign in order to learn more about the different races and all the units they had access to. Now, understandably, we would at some point get a little bored of Dawn of War 2 and move on to other games, but over the years I kept coming back to play the game, just playing it offline as sort of a casual hobby. It was actually only recently that I discovered that the game had some really well done mods which ranged from rebalancing the game to adding more units and even making the factions more appropriate to the lore. There's a lot of mods out there, if you didn't know. You should look them up if you have an interest in this game. Now, I'm sure most people would say Dawn of War 2 isn't quite as good as the original Dawn of War games. There could be a number of reasons for this, but I think it's mainly things like a lack of base building, quite big changes to gameplay, and, other valid reasons. But after playing the older games for myself, I can see where people are coming from. Perhaps in some ways Dawn of War 2 really wasn't the sequel we deserved. Perhaps it was a little disappointing in some aspects. But really, I think this one's a gem. I think this game does do a lot of things right. It has good voice acting, fairly interesting combat. Commander units are fun to play as and come with their own war gear. You can choose how you play them. But whatever the reason is, there's still a reason that has kept me playing, and as long as it continues to exist, there will always be a reason to return to it. The game will always have a special place in my heart, and more importantly, in my Steam library. On a slightly related note, it was actually announced some time ago that a sequel was being worked on. Who knows, maybe Dawn of War 3 will take number 1 on this list in the future, but we'll see. If you made it this far, then I would like to thank you for watching my video. Please stay tuned for more videos from us here at Lagmasters, and until next time, have a good one. Thank you.